Good everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. So in the last episode, I talked about the large data volume and implication of having too much data inside the Salesforce org. So continuing with that part, I just wanted to talk about search options and queries, right? So it's okay. I mean, if you wanted to bring a lot of data to the Salesforce, but that data needs to be used, right? The data needs to be accessed at certain stage. For instance, if you wanted to say bring an order details to the Salesforce, say a million uh, records to the Salesforce for whatever reason, right? Now, if you wanted to access that information, say for instance, if you wanted to access a specific order, right, you have to make sure that your search is optimized, right? It shouldn't be the case that a user wants to search, say, order number or whatever, right? It takes 5 minutes, right? That's a horrible user experience. Or for that matter, if it takes 10 seconds, even that's not a great user experience to me, right? Even if it takes 5 seconds, that's not a great user experience. So you have to, so it becomes more like an architecture problem, right? And it's, I mean, I do understand that, if a developer should think like an architect. And that's just very important when they start building a solution, they have to build something keeping future into consideration. So in this case, when we talk about the search architecture, the searching the data based on the large volume of data plays a very critical role, right? So you have to keep into consideration a few things. The first thing, right, your SQL query has to be fine tuned. You cannot use a SQL query. Say, for instance, if you're, say, custom building, say, an LWC component, so that component will sit on top of, say, maybe somewhere. Okay, just an example, and that component list, certain things based on certain search condition or search criteria, right? So if your SQL query is not fine tuned, the query will take ages to run. And as a matter of fact, and your rendering on the page, the data retrieval from the data store, everything will add up to, to a certain amount of time, which will lead to a bad user experience. So to avoid that, you have to make sure that you fine tune a query and you have to differentiate when to use SQL or when to use social, right? That's very important. So if you are, so social is more like a, full text search language. Okay. So if you wanted to, um, search a specific text within a field, then social is a great option rather than going for SQL. Okay. Because it can tokenize, the terms within a field. So based on that, you will get better search result. But that doesn't mean you have to use social for everything, right? And you have to understand one thing, that there is a governance limit. So if you look at here, right, the social query is 2,000 and for the SQL is 50,000. So you have to keep that into consideration. So if you wanted to get, say, of 20,000 records, you can't use social. That's a very bad strategy to go for it. So that's why you have to understand when to use, you know, at what place. So so you can also use a query optimizer. So so if you go to the developer console, you can pretty much have an option to use to fine tune the query to look at how to optimize it. That's pretty simple, right? I mean, you can use it like, I came from a SQL Server background. I mean, I've worked extensively in the SQL Server platform, and in SQL Server, you have a lot of option to fine tune your um, um, to your query. You can look at a plan, you can look at the query plan, you can look at the execution plan, and I even built a custom software for my own stuff, so I can look at the query, whether it is hitting a table scan or whether look at the store procedure. I fine tune store procedures 1,000 lines long, right? Because I loved doing such kind of things. Even sometimes, even I do at this stage, when I get bored, uh, for my own stuff, right? It's nothing to do with the work stuff. But so keeping that into consideration, SQL is pretty simple, okay? And the optimizer in Salesforce sucks. I'll be very honest. I'll be very upfront about it, right? I don't care if people from Salesforce get offended. It is a primitive language, the SOQL. It doesn't contain joins. You have to find a different way to do different things, right? And you can't write complex queries. The more you write complex queries, you realize the limitation of it. So, but that being said, right, a lot of things you can do quite well with SOQL. So my intention is not to criticize it, but just putting a point across that, right? You can't compare SQL Server with the Salesforce SOQL, right? I mean, it just it doesn't make sense, right? So the query optimizer, what we have, it does the job. It does it quite well. Uh, as far as the SOQL is concerned, you can fine tune. But that being said, you need to find out a better way. It's what I've seen people do. They just fine tune once and they say, oh, it's good to go, right? Because they're testing the data on a low data volume. But when the thing hits the production, then things can go wrong. So that's one of the reasons why I always suggest you should test it on a copy of a production in a sandbox, right? That will give you a real understanding of how your application will behave or how your functionality will behave, right? Because you might build a solution, right, and you're going to test in your Scratch org, which might contain, say, 100 records, and that's not a large data volume, right? When you're talking about LDV, you're normally talking about millions of records, right? So in production might have it, so you might have a full sandbox, right, and which get refreshed most of the times based on your business requirement or governance process, whatever that is in place, and that's the best place to test it. That's the final testing, right? So okay, so if you wanted to, another option is a batch Apex. I'm pretty sure everyone knows what batch Apex is all about. If you wanted to process, say, thousands of records, then it's better to do in an asynchronous way, and the batch Apex is the best place to do so, right? You can schedule your batch, and you can do whatever you want it to do, right? Whatever operation. Um, that's pretty simple. Then you have a bulk queries. So if you wanted to extract, thousands of records, then using a bulk query is a better option to do so, right? The large data set, up to 15 GB worth of data it can extract. So it sounds pretty cool, right? Now you have to understand one thing. There might be a timeout that's going to happen, right? So what I meant by that, right? If your query fails to execute within a 2 minutes standard timeout limit, then the job will fail and the query timeout error is returned. So you have to make sure you have to rewrite the query so that it don't hit the timeout limit, right? So that's the thing you have to factor. Now you must be wondering, right? This is all theory. This is all boring. Yes, I do understand that it is boring topic because it's not hands-on, but when you are an architect, right, when you are implementing a solution, you have to factor all of these things into consideration, right? You have to suggest the right solution. I mean, developer might miss, a few things. I mean, depends, right? Sometimes developers do step in as an architect. I've seen great developers, stepping as an architect, doing an amazing job. Uh, so you have to factor this into consideration. So you tried all of these things, right? Your search, you worked, you try to use bulk queries, you try to use, all the different mechanisms that's available out there. Still, you believe that things are not working. I mean, the search is not optimized. As things are still taking more than it should, right? So in that case, you can go for a skinny table. The skinny, right? The name. I mean, I know. I mean, please don't get into the political correctness. I'm not after that, but this is the term Salesforce used it, so we'll stick to it, right? So the skinny means, right? I mean, you have the limited fields, right? And so so that's, you can say the skinny tables are skinny for a reason. So the way it works, right? So skinny table contains the limited fields, right? And it is a replica of your production data. Say, for instance, if you wanted to create a skinny table for an account, you have to request Salesforce, right? You can't do that by yourself. Okay, so a few fields will be replicated, and skinny tables are very useful if you have a large data volume, right? And it becomes very efficient, and things get indexed properly, and behind the scene, right, your data fetch mode will become extremely efficient. And so, like I said, you can't have too many fields because a skinny table is called skinny for a reason. And you need to contact Salesforce to activate the skinny table and create it for you, right? Um, and the skinny table and actual table, right? Let's say, for instance, account or any other custom table will always be in sync, right? So it's not the case that the data will get out of sync. That doesn't happen. Salesforce make sure that it's always in sync so that you get the right expected behavior. So that's pretty much I wanted to talk about the queries and searches, and it's important. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm pretty sure that you guys have dealt with these issues before around the search performance, and you might have different ways to solve it. If you have done in something in a different way, please put that in the comment below. I'll be interested to know. If it's not a violation of your NDA, but feel free to put your thoughts and comments right as usual. All right. That being said, I hope you guys have an amazing Sunday. Adios.